अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
स्क्रीन आपको नजर आ रही?
यस सर। जी सर।
सॉरी फॉर द डिले, कुछ टेक्निकल फॉल्ट आ गया था मेरे लैपटॉप में, तो दोबारा मुझे कनेक्ट करना पड़ा। So we will start with the previous topic. Last time we were discussing the river systems of Pakistan, and we discussed that mainly there are two river systems in Pakistan. One is the very famous Indus River system, and the other is the Balochistan River system. And then we discussed both the river systems of Pakistan, and we started discussing the Indus River, the salient features of the Indus River. Now we come to the salient features of the other main rivers. So another main river of the Indus River system is the Satluj River. So Satluj River, it's originate in the western Tibet in the Kailash Mountains range, and it is near the source of river Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra. So it is a eastern tributary of Indus River, and under the Indus Water Treaty of 1960, the use of the waters of Satluj River was given to India. So the total length of this river is 960 miles or 1536 kilometers, and it has got a catchment area of 47,000 square miles. The major part of the catchment area, around 70%, it is in India, and the rest 30% in Pakistan. So in the Pakistan, the river Satluj flows into the Pakistan boundary near Firozpur and eventually joins the river Chenab. So it becomes a tributary of Chenab, and it joins the river Chenab 3 miles upstream of the Panjnad Barrage. And the main tributaries of the Satluj River itself, so there are 8 major tributaries. So all of them except the Rohi Nala, it joins Satluj in India. So its major tributaries are mostly in India, and only the Rohi Nala, it joins Satluj in Pakistan. The largest tributary is another river, that is the river Beas, which is also eastern river, given the exclusive rights of water to India under the Indus Water Treaty. So river Beas, it has got 290 miles length, and its catchment area is around 6,200 square miles. So the hydraulic structures which have been constructed on the Satluj River, they are all in India, like Bhakra Dam, Nangal, Pong, and Pando dams. They are all built across Satluj River in India. And there are some barrages on this river as well, like Ropar Barrage, Harike, and Firozpur Barrage. They are all in, you can say, in India. And only in Pakistan, we have the Suleimanki Barrage and the Islam Barrage in Pakistan. So two barrages in Pakistan, and the rest of all the dams and barrages are in India. So it has a large command area in Pakistan as well, and due to the exclusive rights given to India after the treaty, the water from the Chenab had to be then transferred to Ravi and then to Satluj in order to keep going the command area of this Satluj River. Then we come to the river Ravi, which is also exclusive rights given to India as per treaty. So it originates from the lesser Himalayan range in India, and it has length of around 550 miles, having catchment area of 15,600 square miles. And this river Ravi, it runs almost along the Indo-Pakistan border. So sometimes it crosses the Pakistan boundary, and sometimes again it flows in the Indian boundary. And you can say just upstream of Shadra, it enters the Pakistan. Properly, it enters the Pakistan, and it has got tributaries which are mainly the surface runoff streams or nalas like Uch, Tain, Basantar, Deg, and Hadiara Nala. So their upper catchments, it lies in India, and they carry mostly the flash floods. So suddenly, when there is rainfall events in the catchment area, these nalas or streams, they flows and brings, uh, you can say, flash flood in Pakistan, and causes a lot of damage to human lives and the property. So its largest tributary is the Deg Nala, very famous, so which has got a length of 160 miles and having a catchment area of 456 square miles. So barrages which have been built across River Ravi, they are the Madhupar headwork which has been constructed in India, and in Pakistan we have the famous Ballogi headworks and the Sidnai headworks. So these two are in Pakistan, and Balloki is very near to the Lahore city, and the water from River Chenab is diverted to River Ravi, just upstream Balloki headworks, and then it is transferred to Satluj as well. Then the River Chenab itself. So River Chenab, it is formed at the confluence of two streams named as Bhaga and Chandra. So they joined together at a place called Tandi in occupied Jammu and Kashmir state, and upper most part that is snow covered, and it forms the northeast part of Himachal Pradesh. And from Tandi, that is from where it originates, to Akhnur, the river traverses through high mountains, and it has a length of 770 miles, having catchment area of 26,100 square miles. So, River Chenab, it enters Pakistan just upstream the head Marala. That is the first entry point, and then with very sharp changes in slope, uh, that is 130 feet per mile above Kandi, it reduces to 2 feet per mile close to the Trimu. So after Hedmarala, then there is Khanki Barrage, and after Khanki Barrage, there is Trimu Barrage. So these are the famous headworks or barrages across River Chenab. So this is the schematic diagram of Chenab River Basin. At the upstream, you can see the two streams, the Chandra and Bhaga. They join together at the location Tandi, and then this forms the Chenab River, and then various, you can see the hydraulic structures across this river Chenab, both in Pakistan and India, and it has got a large command area, irrigation canal command area running through these irrigation networks. And link canals are also there, which connects River Jhelum with River Chenab and River Chenab with River Ravi. Then comes the Jhelum River, that is the western river. So its the largest tributary is Kishan Ganga, uh, which is known as Neelam River in Pakistan. So it is the same river, but Indian portion it is known as Kishan Ganga, and in Pakistan it is known as the Neelam River. And we have a very famous hydropower project, Neelam Jhelum hydropower project on river Neelam, and it also connects at Jhelum River through a tunnel. So it has got 165 miles the tributary length, and the barrages on the river. There is one barrage, Rasool Barrage, and one dam, Mangla Dam. So one storage reservoir, and downstream there is a one barrage known as the Rasool Barrage. So this is the whole Indus River system, and you see the structures, hydraulic structures built across this Indus River system. So eastern rivers are the Ravi, Beas, Satluj. The rights of waters of these rivers have been given to India under the Indus Water Treaty, and the western rivers Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, the rights of use of water has been given to Pakistan. So above the border on Indian side, you see the hydraulic structures built on the eastern rivers, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj, and downstream on Pakistani sides, you see all the structures which have been built on the eastern rivers and the western rivers. And all they confluence just near the Panjnath, location of Panjnath, and then it forms just one Indus River. And after Indus, when it becomes one river, then you see various barrages over it, Buddu, Kotri, and Sakkar Barrage. Kotri is the last hydraulic structures on the Indus River. And then the Indus River flows or disposes of into Arabian Sea. And this is a typical water distribution system which is followed in Indo-Pak subcontinent. So from the river, the water is diverted through the barrages or headworks into a main canal, and then the main canal is further bifurcated into branch canals, then the distributaries, sub-branches, and the last structure being the water course. And the water course through the outlet then connects the uh, irrigated area where the water which has been diverted from the river reaches its destiny. So this is a typical water distribution system which is followed in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, and it is all supply based. So when there is water available in the rivers, it will be diverted into canal and then the irrigation canal network. And when there will be shortage, so there will be also shortage experienced in the irrigation network. So this is purely supply-based system, also known as the Varabandi. The timings of different farmers have been set, and days and the hours according to which they get their shares. So this was the river system of Pakistan and the distribution, how it is then distributed for the agriculture purposes. So this is the end of the third lecture, and now we start the fourth lecture, or the fourth, you can say, main topic is the river mechanics. So which is the main topic of the subject river engineering. So we will start the river mechanics, or also known as the river morphology, by going through the classification of the rivers. As we have seen that rivers, they exhibit different characteristics. We have seen that they vary in length, their discharges, their sediment loads. So they are so much varied that it is very difficult to classify them. And it is the classification of river system is quite a complex system. So as there are number of ways in which we can classify these rivers by taking one of the dominant characteristic of the rivers and we classify together those rivers. So rivers which can be classified in several ways. The first way can be by classifying them according to their nature of their substrate, that is the material in which they are flowing. So substrate meaning the material, whether they are flowing in the bedrock or in the soil known as the alluvial rivers. So we'll go in detail one by one. Then second classification can be carried out by the relationship of the rivers to the groundwater table, where the groundwater table exists, whether it is below the surface water level in the river or the groundwater table is above the surface water level in the river itself. So we can classify river in this way as well. Then we can also classify the rivers by taking the percentage of time they flow, whether they flow around the year or only occasionally they flow when there is rainfall events in the catchment area. So that is another way rivers can be classified. Then we can also use the sediment load as the classification criteria, that what kind of sediment load a river is carrying, whether the dominant is the bed load or the suspended load. So in this way we can classify. Then according to the dominant particle size of the bed sediment, whether the coarse textured or the fine or the medium, we can also classify rivers carrying the dominant particle size of the bed sediment. And lastly, we can also classify rivers by their morphology, what pattern they exhibit when they flow, like the braiding pattern or the meandering pattern, or they are flowing straight. So it is a very complex system. As river, we can classify them in a number of ways. So we will discuss these classification criteria one by one. So first coming to the nature of substrate, that is the material in which they are flowing. So some rivers, especially the small rivers which flows in the rocky areas or mountainous areas, they usually flow directly on the bedrock. That is, the material is impervious. The bed and the sides, they are made up of rock. So that's why we can classify such rivers as the bedrock rivers, or we can classify them as non-alluvial rivers, as there is no sediment, no soil, or they are directly flowing on the bedrock. So that's why we can call them as bedrock rivers or the non-alluvial rivers. So they are usually the small rivers which starts or originates in the mountainous areas. So other rivers, especially the large rivers, so they flow on a bed of sediment they have deposited and continue to transport. So some rivers, especially the large rivers, we observe that it has deposited sediments and then it starts flowing on those sediments or within those sediments, and they also transport those sediments. So such rivers, we can classify them as alluvial rocks. So the difference you can see at the bottom figures, the bedrock river or non-alluvial directly flowing on the bedrock without any sediments, but the alluvial rivers flowing on the deposited sediments, and also it transports this sediment. So these are the basic two classification based on this criteria, the nature of the substrate. But of course, some rivers can lie in between, or some you can say reaches, they are flowing as bedrock, directly on the bedrock they are flowing, and then downstream in the plain areas they become alluvial rivers. So the most of the rivers, they will exhibit both these types of you can say characteristics. When in the mountainous or rocky areas, they will be exhibiting the characteristics of bedrock river, and when they travel downstream in the plain areas, they will be exhibiting the characteristics of alluvial river, as they would have collected or deposited a lot of sediment on their bed, and they will be flowing on that sediment and also transporting that sediment. So you can see both the behavior in a single river as well. Then we come to the second classification criteria, the criteria based on the relationship to existence of groundwater table, where the groundwater table is present, whether above or below the water surface in the river. So if the water surface in the river, it lies above the local groundwater table in the river banks, then of course what will be happening is that the river will be losing water to its bank. It will giving away or contributing its water to the groundwater. So such river, we call them as effluent river. So because they are giving away their water, so or losing their water, so we also call them as the losing rivers. When the water table, when the water surface in the river is above the local groundwater table. On the other hand, if it is the reverse case, that is the water surface in the river is lying below the local groundwater table in the banks, then the river gains water from its bank. The water, groundwater, will start flowing in the river itself, and in this way, the river will be gaining water. So then, this type of river, we can classify them as influent river or a gaining river. So simply, we can call them as gaining river and losing river. When it is receiving water from the groundwater, then it is influent river, and when it is losing water to the groundwater, then it is effluent river or a losing river. So it is also possible that throughout the length of the river, the groundwater table remains entirely below the riverbed level. So in that case also, the river will be known as the effluent river, because it will be losing its water through the groundwater table. So I will explain this in the figure. So in the above figures, you can see the influent. As you see, the water level in the river itself is higher than the groundwater. So water from the river will be adding to the groundwater. So that means it is losing water, so known as influent or losing river. But in figure B, you see the water surface level in the river is below the groundwater. So that means the groundwater will be adding to the river itself, and it will be gaining water, so it will be known as the effluent. affluent river. So you can see that in case of a channel, when there is no rainfall, so you see the groundwater is all below the surface, and water is in the river, it's neither losing or not being added because there is no rainfall even in the catchment area, no rainfall, the channel is running dry, so uh, the groundwater table will not be adding the water to the river, as the river bed is quite high and the groundwater table is quite deep. But in case when there is a heavy rainfall, water will start flowing in the river, and as the water table is deep, it is below the river bed, so the river will start losing the uh, flow, and it will be added to the groundwater. So this usually happens in channels uh, which remain dry when there is no rainfall, because the water table is quite deep and it does not contribute. So there is no base flow in those rivers. And when there is a rainfall in events in the catchment area, water starts flowing in those rivers, but they will also be losing that water to the groundwater, and it will be added to it. Then third criteria of classification is the percentage of time the river is flowing. So we have seen that some rivers, they flow all around the year, and even when the rainfall events have stopped in the catchment area, but you see water flowing in the river itself. So such rivers, we call them as perennial streams because they flow all around the year. That is, even when there is no rainfall, the base flow, that is the groundwater, it is flowing in those rivers. So other rivers, you see that they only flow for a short time when a rainfall event has taken place in the catchment area, and the rest of the time, which is usually most of the time, their beds are dry. So such rivers, they are classified as amphibial streams. So some rivers, they will lie between these two streams. During the wetter part of the year, they will flow like the perennial streams, whereas during the drier part, they will flow as an amphibial stream. So such types of rivers which lie in between these two streams, we call them as intermittent streams. So this you can see the perennial in the dry season as well. You see the discharges or the flow in it, but the level is low. But if there is rainfall in the catchment area in the wet season, so you see the level goes up, but the river both in the dry season and the wet season is flowing. And if you see its hydrograph, it is never zero. So you see when there is rainfall, the peak goes up, and when it is dry season, the peak decreases, but still it is flowing all around the year. So this is can be classified as the perennial rivers. And ephemeral, where most of the time you see them dry, and when there is rainfall, especially heavy rainfall in the catchment area, so the river starts flowing. So if you plot their hydrographs, so you will see small peaks and then zero, nothing appears. But in perennial, you see continuous hydrograph. It fluctuates, but it never goes to zero. But in the amphibial, so you see a typical hydrograph goes up and comes to zero. And in the intermittent, so you see sometimes it exhibits the behavior of the perennial. You see the continuous hydrograph, and when there is no rainfall, then zero. and it shows the characteristics of amphimural streams. So this we call as the intermittent, as it lies between these two streams. The uh, characteristics of the perennial and the ephemeral or non-perennial both are exhibited in the intermittent streams. So clear up to this point? Anything not clear? Classification? कोई चीज तो नहीं ऐसी क्लियर ना हुई? So okay, we then advance to other criteria. सेडिमेंट लोड. अब एक क्राइटेरिया हमने डिस्कस किया कि सेडिमेंट लोड के ऊपर भी हम उसको क्लासिफाई कर सकते हैं. So in the rivers you will notice that the sediment sources, they consist mostly of coarse sand and gravel. They carry mostly the bed load. जिनके अंदर तो coarser textured material आ रहा है, तो उसमें usually you will see that they are carrying the bed load, that is the load along the bed, river bed only. So such rivers, we can classify them as bed load rivers. The load which is transported by bouncing, jumping or sliding. So those are coarse textured material. But on the other hand, we see in the some rivers, they are transporting the finer type of sediments like clay, silt, fine sand. So as they are uh, having fine texture, so the sediment, it remains suspended. It does not settle down and does not travel along the bed. So those rivers which carry such types of sediments, fine textured, we call them as suspended load rivers. And in most of the river, you will see both types of sediments, the bed load and the suspended load. So such rivers, we can classify them as mixed load rivers, where you see all types of sediments, coarse textured, medium textured, fine textured. So we classify them as mixed load, as there will be partial bed load sediment flowing or transported in that river, and partly some fine textured suspended load sediments. So mostly rivers, they are carrying both types. But seldom you will also see only one type of sediment flowing, then we can classify them accordingly, either the bed load or the suspended load. But if we have both types of sediments, then we can call them as mixed load rivers. So this type of classification is very loose. So technically, it is not very sound because the sediment load, it's the gradation of that, it continues changes due to the fluctuation in discharges and the material which is being eroded by the river from the catchment area or from its banks or from the bed. So purely bed load river can be converted into a suspended load or vice versa, or purely bed load or suspended load river can become a mixed load. So this is not a very sound type of classification, as the gradation of the material, it does not remain constant. It changes with the passage of time due to many factors. The major factor, the discharge itself, its fluctuations. As you see, when the discharge is more heavy textured material, it starts transporting. But during the normal flows, the finer or the medium textured sediment material it flows. So it is difficult to classify a river just only a bed load or a suspended load. So most of the rivers, they are having load of both types and can be classified as mixed load rivers. Then another classification also based on the sediment, but the dominant particle size. So which particle size is dominant regarding the bed material? So it can be gravel bed river or the sand bed rivers. That is the material of the river bed, whether it is consisting of gravels, then it will be known as gravel bed, or it is consisting of sand, so then it will be known as sand bed. And these two are very common, the river flowing on the gravel bed or on the sand bed. But there is another uncommon type, that is the mud bed river, a sort of mud on which it is flowing. So we can then classify the river on the basis of the bed material, gravel bed, sand bed, or mud bed, which is very rare. So also in the most of the sand bed rivers, the bed material sediment discharge on average is in the form of suspended load. And in gravel bed rivers, on the other hand, most of the sediment discharge is accounted for by the bed load transport. So again, a confusion can be created regarding the basis, criteria basis, because we have all classified, or we have one classification based on the sediment type. So if we just take the material, bed material, and then classify the rivers, so confusion can be created, and it may not be very clear whether we are classifying the rivers based on the bed material only or on the sediment which it is transporting. Then lastly, the criteria based on the river morphology. So that is very important. So, and this is a very distinct classification. As you will see, there is no ambiguity regarding this classification. So, if you observe the morphology of rivers, especially in plan view, so you will see it varies enormously. If you have a eagle eye look from the top, so you will see the river exhibits different types of patterns which shows their mechanics or the morphology. So its morphology is in a way connected to the nature of the sediment loads. As we have discussed in the previous lectures, that if it is carrying bed load only, the dominant is the bed load, then it will exhibit one type of pattern. But when suspended load is more, then it exhibits another type. So we can use two characteristics for the classifications of rivers based on morphology. One is the sinuosity and other is the multi-channelness. So this is a difficult word, very uncommon. So, but these are the two characteristics. As you will see, they are very dominant. The pattern are based on these two characteristics, sinuosity and the multi-channelness. So what is sinuosity? So we can define the sinuosity with respect to two arbitrary points along the river, being the ratio of the long channel distance between the 2 points and the straight line distance between the points. At the bottom, you see a river zigzagging. So its total length, that is, if you measure its length all along the curvature and you divide it by the straight length, that is from point A to B. So the ratio of that, the actual length along the channel itself divided by the straight line distance, that is known as the sinuosity. So the more it follows curves, that means more sinuosity it will have. And the minimum sinuosity is for a straight river. In case of a straight river, both the distances will be equal. So sinuosity for a straight river will be equal to 1. And more the sinuous river is, greater will be its sinuosity, that is more curvatures. So rivers can have a sinuosity approaching up to 4. So that means 4 times more length as compared to the straight line distance. So this is one characteristics we can define or classify the river based on the morphology, that how much or what is the sinuosity of that river. So a river which is flowing in a straight path will have the sinuosity equal to 1, and a river which will have meanders or follows very zigzag path, its sinuosity can be as high as 4, that is 4 times the actual length higher than the straight line distance. So sinuosity clear होगी? What is sinuosity?
जी सर, ये क्लियर है.
ओके, सो एक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक तो सिनोसिटी था, दूसरा है मल्टी चैनलनेस. तो इट इज नॉट ए कॉमन इंग्लिश वर्ड, बल्कि आपने बनाया हुआ लफ्ज है फॉर स्पेशली रिवर इंजीनियरिंग के लिए, बट इट वेरी क्लियरली शोज व्हाट वी मीन मल्टी चैनलनेस, कि वो कितनी चैनल बनाता है. सो दो इट इज awkward but very useful word. So it is reflecting that channel, how much channels it bifurcates into. कि एक single channel है और एक bifurcate हो जाती है. So we can then classify as to the bifurcation from a single into multiple channels. So when it travels, some rivers, they have got only one channel, and especially if there is no obstacle or no sandbars or no islets, so they will keep having a single channel. But when there is a sandbars or island in between, so they will split up. तो आपने देखा कि वो different branches में split हो जाती हैं और multiple channels बन जाती हैं. So the individual channels of such a rivers, they are known as ana branches. So those characteristics we use for the classification based on the morphology. Sinuosity, जो आपने देखा कि ratio of the actual length along the channel divided by the straight line distance. तो एक तो वो हमें शो कर देती है कि किस टाइप की पैटर्न बन रहा है, और एक है मल्टी चैनलनेस, कि वो बाइफरकेट या स्प्लिट अप कितने चैनल्स में हो जाती है. सो दो क्राइटेरिया को हम यूज करते हैं. सो बोथ द सिनोसिटी एंड मल्टी चैनलनेस, दे आर अप टू ए लार्ज एक्सटेंट इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ वन अनदर. सो ये एक दूसरे पर डिपेंड नहीं करता है कि एक रिवर अगर साइनस है तो वो मल्टी चैनल भी जरूर होगा, एक जरूरी नहीं है, or vice versa. So we can say that these are two different characteristics. So straight rivers, those having sinuosity not greater than 1, because the actual length and the straight line length will be equal, so they will be having one sinuosity. So they are very uncommon. Surprisingly, they are very uncommon. Seldom you will find a river flowing in a straight reach. आप देखेंगे कुछ देर बाद दूर it bends or forms curves. Straight बहुत कम reach के लिए वो flow करता है. So if it is a natural river, so it's very hard that a river flows in a straight line. But the human, as per human intervention, we can make a river straight. हम river को सीधा कर सकते हैं, लेकिन if we have some purpose, why we want to straighten it out. Otherwise, if a river is flowing naturally in a natural way, so very seldom it will follow a straight path. Of course, it will turn, it will bend, it will make curves and exhibits one of those patterns, either meandering or the braiding. So, braiding rivers, we have seen that they have low sinuosity, they do not have curvatures, but they have multiple channels. So we can classify the braided rivers as low sinuosity, having low sinuosity, but having multi-channels. And meandering rivers, where we see high amplitude curvatures, so their sinuosity is high, but they will be exhibiting the single channel characteristics. So these two you will commonly see river braiding having low sinuosity and multi-channelness, and a meandering river having high sinuosity and single channel. And then there are another types of rivers, though these are less common. They have got both high sinuosity and multi-channelness, and they are known as the anastomosing rivers. So ये बहुत कम common है. ज़्यादातर river either it will be exhibiting the braiding pattern or the meandering pattern. लेकिन उसकी sinuosity भी high हो और multiple channels भी form करे, वो बहुत कम होता है. And those are known as the anastomosing rivers. So the summary of the morphology river criteria. So you see low sinuosity and high sinuosity in the first column, and in the first row you see the single channel and multiple channel. So low sinuosity single channel will exhibit the straight path, जो straight चल रहा है, उसमें sinuosity low, it will be lowest, that is equal to 1. But low sinuosity having multiple channels, that will be known as the braided pattern. So you see a channel splitting up into multiple channels and then reuniting. And in the high sinuosity, if the river has high sinuosity, it will be having the meanders formation if it is flowing in a single channel. But if it is also splitting up into multiple channels, so then it will be known as the anastomosing. So in which there is high sinuosity and also multi-channelness. So these are the basic classification based on the river morphology, and this is very distinct or prominent. इसमें कोई शक व शुबहत की बात नहीं है. बाकी में आपने देखा है कि वो टेक्निकली इतनी साउंड नहीं है एज कंपेयर टू द criteria of morphology, the pattern which a river is making based on two characteristics, sinuosity or multi-channelness. So I think now अब आपको काफी clear हो गया होगा different patterns exhibit करता है river. So clear, everything clear, which is जो भी concept clear ना हुआ.
क्लियर सर सारा कुछ.
और इसकी एग्जांपल रिवर इंडस की अगर आप देखना चाहें ब्रीडिंग और मेंडरिंग की, सो ब्रीडिंग तो आपको बड़ा इस्लामाबाद के करीब भी अगर आप गाजी बरौता हाइड्रो पावर प्रोजेक्ट पर जाएं और डाउन स्ट्रीम जरा देखें तो बड़ा क्लियरली आपको इंडस रिवर ग्रेडिंग पैटर्न नजर आएगा। और अगर आप मेंडरिंग देखना चाहते हैं रिवर इंडस की, देन यू गो टू सिंध। सिंध प्रोविंस में आप लड़काना डाउन स्ट्रीम उसके जाएं, और स्पेशली वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट जो मंजोदारो की है, सो यू विल सी एक्सट्रीम meanders। और ये गूगल अर्थ पर भी जा सकते हैं विदाउट फिजिकली गोइंग टू दिस प्लेसेस। आप गूगल अर्थ पर भी जरा रिवर इंडस को फॉलो करें, हाउ इट इज फॉर्मिंग मल्टी चैनल्स जस्ट अपस्ट्रीम या डाउनस्ट्रीम आप देखें गाजीपुर होता है, और मेंडर्स देखें आप लड़काना के पास जहाँ पर मंजोदारो हमारी वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट है। सो यू विल सी बोथ ऑफ देम एग्जिबिटिंग इन अ सिंगल रिवर। और जब पूरा रिवर इंडस फॉलो करें तो आपको बड़े कम स्ट्रेट कोई रीच नजर आएगी, हार्डली एनी रीच जहाँ पर ये स्ट्रेट फ्लो कर रहा होगा। सो विद इन पाकिस्तान वी आर वेरी फॉर्चुनेट कि हमें ये पैटर्न्स पाकिस्तान में भी हम ये देख सकते हैं अपने रिवर्स के अंदर। नाउ कमिंग टू
Sir,
हाँ जी
sir, I've read in a book that the radius at which a river reach meanders maximally is equal to 2 times the width of the river. So, is it right, sir?
Yeah, we are going to study in detail. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there are empirical relationships established between the width and the length, that the curvature length we can find out by using these parameters. And we are going to discuss in the coming lecture.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, we will be discussing these in detail. And especially with respect to the Indo-Pak subcontinent, because these have been established for this area. So, okay, till now we have been studying the classification globally or universally. So those were universally criteria which have been adopted. But for the Indo-Pak subcontinent, we have our own classification system. So in order to understand how we classify in Pakistan or India, because we have got a very large network of irrigation and the Indus Basin river system. So we have seen shared by many countries. So we have our own classification of rivers. So we classify the river on the basis of the topography of river basin, the river stages, the river shape which it exhibits in plains, the flood hydrographs, and on the location. So we expand little more, and we include those criteria which we have studied in the global classification, but we add more in our classification to make it more distinct or more clear, the classification of river itself. So you can see in the chart the 6 criteria on the basis of which the rivers are classified in this region: the topography of the river basin, the river stage, the shape in plains, the flood hydrograph, the life stage, and the location. So, taking up the first criteria, the topography of river basin. So, it is further subdivided into upper reaches in hills and lower reaches in alluvial plains. So, the topography in the two reaches will be entirely different. In the upper, which will be hilly or the rocky area, and the lower reaches, which consist of alluvial plains. So in the upper reaches, the rivers, they can be classified as incised or boulder rivers, because depending on the coarse textured material, sediment, which it is carrying, the shape or the size is heavier. So that's why it is sub-classified as incised or bolder river. But when we see in the lower reaches, in alluvial plains, it entirely shows a different pattern because the sediments size it changes. So there, the river either it will be depositing sediments in the plain area, or it will be uh, eroding its bed, or it will be stable. That means it will be the amount which of the erosion and the deposition, they will be equalizing itself. So the same amount of erosion and the same amount of deposition, so we call as a stable river. So if the river is depositing sediments, we call the river as aggrading. That is, it is raising its riverbed. And if it is eroding, that is deepening its bed, then we call it a degrading river. It is degrading its bed. And if it is doing in equal amount, we call that stable. In some portions, it is aggrading, but it is also degrading. So overall, it is a stable river, or it is, you can say, having a equilibrium stage. Then in the river stage, so though actually this is not a classification, but it is just the stage of the river itself. It can be classified as the deltaic, that is just before the deposition, or you can say disposal of into another water body like ocean or sea. It forms a delta. It deposits all the fine sediments just before the disposal into the sea. So that stage, or it is almost the end stage, is known as the deltaic stage. So we can classify the river as in the deltaic stage, or it is a tidal river where it is connecting to the river and the sea. That is the portion in between that. So it is known as the tidal river where the sea water is entering and also leaving. So it is flowing in the river. So that can be classified as the tidal river. Then the other basis or the criteria can be the shape which it forms in plains. So this is actually the morphology criteria. As we just discussed, that it can have straight path or the meandering or the braiding. So these three shapes it can form in plains. So we can classify on the basis of shape in plains, whether it is straight, whether it is meandering, or whether it is braiding. Then on the basis of flood hydrograph, what type of hydrograph uh, is constructed in case of a flood. So some rivers, their hydrograph we have studied in flight hydrology. It is simply graphical representation between time versus discharge. So if you plot that, you will see in some rivers it suddenly goes up, reaches the peak, very short peak, and then it comes down. So those are the fleshy type of hydrograph because they are causing flash floods. So they are normally happen in our DI Khan area, BG Khan area, as there are hill torrents, and when they flow in the streams or the rivers, so they exhibit their flood hydrographs will show this type of hydrographs. Sudden peak remains or persists for very short time and then it goes down. But for other rivers, you will see the normal hydrograph that slowly it will rise. It has got broader peak. It stays for some time, and then there is fluctuation. It goes down. It is decreasing. So that is the normal trend. So those are for uh, normal flood hydrograms. But fleshy is sudden rise, sharp peak, remains, the peak remains for very short time, and then sudden decrease, sudden recession. So we can classify based on the flood hydrographs of the rivers, especially in the monsoon season, what type of flood hydrographs they are exhibiting. Then the life stages. So, like human being is born, then he goes into his childhood, then he becomes young, and then he becomes old and he dies. Likewise, a river has also got life stages. So, one life stage can be virgin, that is a river which does not dispose of into another water body. It never meets another water body, either all its water infiltrates or is evaporated. So especially in Balochistan, you will see many types of small rivers which do not dispose of into another water body. And in the arid areas, especially where the temperatures are very high, so these rivers they dry up before being disposed of into another river. Then there are some rivers which have got the uh, which are flowing for centuries. They are quite old, so we can classify them as per their life stage as mature because they have been flowing for hundreds or thousands of years. Their history, if we look at, so they are mature rivers. And third life stage we can classify are the young rivers, which are originating in the rocky or the mountainous area. They are very active and actively eroding the banks and the beds of itself. So those we call as the young rivers. So in geological times, they have not been flowing for say 50 or 60 years. So those are quite young. But if a river is flowing for hundred of years, so then it is known as mature. So in geological time, even 100 years is not so long. जियोलॉजी में आपको पता है कि थाउजेंड्स की बात होती है, सो सेंचुरीज की बात होती है. सो ऑल रिवर्स जो कि इतना ज़्यादा अरसे से फ्लो ना कर रहे हैं, वी कैन क्लासीफाई देम एज यंग. देन लास्ट क्राइटेरिया इज द लोकेशन, के ओरिजिनेट कहाँ से हो रहे हैं, फ्रॉम वेयर दे आर ओरिजिनेटिंग, व्हाट इज द सोर्स. सो इन इंडो-पाक सबकॉन्टिनेंट mostly we classify them as Himalayan rivers or non-Himalayan rivers. So in Pakistan, mostly our rivers are Himalayan rivers, but in uh, India or in Bangladesh or in Nepal, they have also some non-Himalayan rivers. So likewise, if for some other countries, they can have this criteria of location as per their existing conditions. ये उनके कहाँ से रिवर्स जो है वो ओरिजिनेट हो रहे हैं. बट दिस इज एप्लीकेबल टू आवर रीजन इंडो-पाक सबकॉन्टिनेंट. सो इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, बांग्लादेश, दिस टाइप ऑफ रीजन we can classify on the basis of location whether they are originating from Himalayan or non-Himalayan mountain ranges. So now we discuss one by one classification based on topography of river basin. So we had two subclasses, rivers in hills and rivers in plains. And then further subclassification in hills are the incised rivers and the boulder rivers. So what are the difference and what are the conditions existing? So when the river is flowing in the hills, so that is its origination point, its main source. So it will be very active in eroding its base, that is the bed and the banks, and it will try to carve, or it will try to widen its width. So if you look at all the rivers which are originating from mountainous areas, they will be having a very smaller width because the material in which they are flowing is highly resistant. Uh, हमने इंडस रिवर का देखा था when it comes into Pakistan in Gilgit Baltistan. So you have seen its width is not so much because it is flowing all in the bedrock. But when it comes to plain areas downstream in Punjab, you see its width in kilometers and kilometers. Entirely different characteristics. So likewise, rivers in hills, so they will be either being classified into incised river. So incised is an English word meaning to cut, incise. So incised river where it is cutting or eroding. So it is very active in the process of degradation, and the slopes they are very steep, and the river is cutting its base and the banks to widen its channel. So then we can call that as a incised river. And what are the chief characteristics of a incised river? So first of all, you will see that it will have well-defined narrow cross-section cut through hill gorges. तो अगर आप इसकी क्रॉस सेक्शन देखें तो वेरी वेल डिफाइंड एंड नैरो, क्योंकि हाईली रेजिस्टेंट मटेरियल से वो फ्लो कर रहा है. सो बेड एंड बैंक्स highly resistant to erosion or mostly rocky beds only. And another characteristics you will see of these incised river is that bed is lined with different sizes of boulders. So sediment size very large. Boulders आपको वहाँ पर नजर आएंगे, बड़े बड़े पत्थर जो है ना वहाँ पर आपको नजर आते हैं. And some material also rolls along the bed. So depending on the discharges, they also travel or transport. And another characteristic you will see is the clear water, because it is mostly snow melt, so you will see very clear water. And velocity will be very high, swift flow. So it will have steep bed slope with abrupt falls. As it is originating or upper reaches में, so that's why we will clearly see these characteristics. And the sediment which is being transported, you will see that it is entirely different in character as compared to its riverbed, because it is not the bed material which it is transporting, because the bed already rocky bed, so it will be carrying sediments which it has got from the catchment area due to the soil erosion and deforestation. So whatever sediments it catches from there, it will be transporting that. And if there are small types of meanders, so those will not be relevant, because very difficult for the river in the upper hills to form meanders, because material being resistant, it cannot change its course. So that's why you will see if it is forming some meanders, so very irregular type of meanders will be formed. So these are the characteristics of a incised river when it is flowing in the upper hilly area. Second sub-classification is the boulder river. It is also in the upper part, upper hilly area. So it is the reach of the river when it emerges from the hills. Now it has covered the distance in the hills, and it has emerged with a very well-defined cross-section and non-submersible beds on other side. So you will see its characteristic by the steepness of its slope, and its bed will having a mixture of boulders, gravel, shingle, and sand. So in the inside, you will only observe the boulders, but in the Boulder River, you will see now it has got the other type of sediment as well, like gravel, shingle, and coarse sand. So, what are the chief characteristics of the river when it is flowing in this reach? So, it will be flowing now through the submountainous tract, as it has already covered its distance in the upper part. So, it will remain confined within the valley as the sides are hard, so not allowed to change its course. Bed slopes, they will again be steep, and usually they will be having a slope of 1 in 500 to 1 in 1000. And velocities, as it is flowing in the steep slopes, so it will be higher, but not as much higher as compared to the velocity which it was following in the incised rivers. So water again is generally clear, as mostly it is the snow melt, and when there is rainfall in liquid form, so then you can see some muddy water as well. So larger discharges, they are accommodated by the river digging in deeper in the valley, because now it will be facing less resistant material, so it can carve its width more, it can deepen its bed, and it can accommodate more discharge. So boulder will deposit at that place, and the finer materials, they will be carried further downstream in the plains. So if you visit Kunar, Swat, or Chitral types of rivers, so you will see many boulders, they will be standing there, even in Swat river. आपने देखा होगा boulders वहीं पर पड़े हुए हैं, और जो finer materials है, that is being transported downstream. So it flows through wide, shallow bed and develops straight course, but for very uh, less length. The bed material is pervious, so that means water will seep down and it will add to the groundwater. So because now the characteristics are changing and it is emerging from the hills, so we have seen that in both the cases, in size and the boulder, there is a distinct difference between the characteristics. Then, when it comes in the plains downstream, then it becomes a alluvial river. So we discussed the classification based on the substrate. So in the first, in the hilly areas, you have seen mostly it was flowing in the bedrock. So it was sort of bedrock river. But now when it enters into floodplains, so it will be flowing in the sediment it has deposited. It becomes alluvial river. So in this reach, the river flows through deposits created by itself and is constantly building its floodplain by overflowing. As it is carrying a lot of sediments, so it will be depositing, and those will be depositing when there will be floods. So some sediments will also be spreaded in the floodplains. So the sediment which it is carrying will be similar to that in its bed and banks. So because it is the same material, sediment का material वही होगा जो कि उसके bed और banks में होगा. And the chief characteristics of the rivers are that you will see the formation of meanders, which are really formed from one bank to the other. The river is following a zigzag course. and it flows through the alluvium created by itself. That is, the material carried is similar to that of the bed. The river runs on relatively flat ground. अब steep की बजाय flat ground हो जाएगा flood plain में, and finer materials they will be settling down because now the slope is almost nil. It is flat ground, so the finer materials they will start settling down, and material is deposited by the river during the alternate process of spreading and receding. So in the deposit laid by the river itself, the river carves its own deep winter channel, a floodway or a khadarway. So especially during low flow season, you would have observed that there is a single channel flowing within the river, and that is the deepest channel, which is even flowing in the winter season. It is usually carrying the base flow. So uh, the river will exhibit the meandering formation as well, and also it will try to change its course. अब वो क्योंकि meander कर रहा है तो अपना course भी वो change कर सकता है. And when it is experiencing flood, when the water in the river itself is above the capacity, channel capacity, it will inundate the surrounding area, which are the floodplains, and it will cause considerable damage to both humans and the property itself. So, river, when it is flowing in the floodplains, they are further classified as the aggrading, degrading, and the stable. So, aggrading river we define as the rivers which are depositing sediment. They are building up their beds. Their beds are rising. So, uh, the reasons why a river aggrades is that if there is a obstruction like a dam or a barrage, so what will happen that there will be backwater flow and water level will rise, and there will be, you can say, uh, settling of the sediments. So velocity will reduce due to the obstruction, and the river starts depositing its sediment on the bed, and it will start raising its bed. So the opposite of the grading river is the degrading. So when a river erodes its bed, then it is known as the degrading river. That is, it is lowering its bed. So the degrading river, we will find a river degrading its bed downstream a dam or a barrage. So there you will see the water being clear as all the sediment would have deposited upstream the reservoir, and downstream you get clearer water. So clearer water has got more ability to erode. So that's why you will see erosion on the downstream side. Then the third subclassification in the floodplains are the stable rivers. So stable river, we say a river which as a whole maintained its slopes, depths and channel dimensions without any noticeable raising or lowering. That is, it is balancing itself. Some part it is grading, some part it is degrading, but overall its slope, depth and dimensions, it does not change. So uh, we call this condition as a temporary from a geological point of view because it will not stay for long. The river will either turn into aggrading or degrading depending on the conditions which are exhibiting in the upstream or the downstream of the river, and it will again become either a grading or a degrading river. So for a very short term, it may have this temporary formation of a stable river, but again, depending on the conditions, upstream or downstream, it will become either a grading or a degrading river. So classification based on river stage. So basically, those are the stages. So we cannot say that this is a type of river. Actually, it is a stage in the life of a river. So either it can be of deltaic or of tidal. So deltaic river, when it approaches the sea, it has got very gentle slope, velocity decreases, and it drops all the sediment which it was carrying, and it flows around that sediment deposited. So it splits up into multi-channels. So you might have seen the delta which the river Indus forms in Indus province, Sindh province, the run of Kutch, very big delta formed by the river Indus. So it is the last stage that all the sediments which it has been carrying is being transported, the finer material it deposited, and as it deposits, it forms obstruction and it flows around that. So it splits up into multiple channels, and then it flows into the Arabian Sea. Whereas in the tidal river, it is the tail reach of a river where it is joining the ocean. And when the river or when the sea or the ocean is in flood, the tide will enter its water into the river. So what the sea water will flow in and out of the river depending on the tides. When there are high tides, it will enter into the sea, into the river, and when the tides are low, that is the ebb tide, it will flow back. So this type of river is classified as the tidal river, which keeps on flowing in both the directions. A very famous example is of River Thames in UK. If you have visited London, so this River Thames is a tidal river, so it flows both ways. Then classification based on shape in plane, either it will be flowing in a straight reach or exhibiting the zigzag pattern known as the meandering or a grading pattern. So for a very less distance, it will be exhibiting the straight path which the river will be flowing, and mostly the maximum flow will be in the center. In the meandering stage, you will see the river, especially the alluvial rivers, they have the tendency to move in a zigzag fashion, having sinuosity, the bends and curvatures. So we can classify as a meandering river. And grading, when the river is flowing in a very wide and shallow section characterized by small interlaced channels separated by bars or shoals. So sandbars, the channel will split and will flow around those bars and then reunite at the end of that sandbar. So then it will be known as a graded river. And based on the flood hydrograph, as we discussed, the fleshy rivers, where the hydrograph shape will be exhibiting a sudden rise, a sharp peak, and it will remain for a short time, and then there will be sharp recession. So such rivers we can classify as fleshy rivers, and the rivers which exhibits hydrographs in the shape of slowly rise in the rising limb, then the broad peak which persists for some time, and then there is a slowly receding. So that is a, you can say, a normal river. Then classification based on life stage, whether it is disposing of into another river or completely drying up before it is being disposed of into another water body, especially in the arid zone. So this is termed as the virgin river. And mostly in arid areas, in desert areas, you will find such type of rivers. Whereas a mature river, it flows through certain fixed limits. So that is known as a mature river. And those limits, they have been established for a number of years. So those are known as the Khadar. So it is flowing within those fixed limits. And young river, young in geological times, when it is actively eroding its channel, its bank, and its bed. Then classification based on location, Himalayan and non-Himalayan. So the location from where the rivers have originated. So like our Chenab River or in India, Ganga and Brahmaputra, they all are Himalayan rivers because they originate in the Himalayan mountain range. And also the eastern rivers like Ravi, Beas, Satluj, they are also Himalayan rivers. And some Indian rivers, Ghagar, Gandak, Gomti, Kosi rivers in India, they also originate from Himalayan range. So they are known as the Himalayan rivers. Whereas non-Himalayan rivers, they are not snow-fed. The Himalayan rivers mostly they get their sources of water from the snowmelt and partially from the monsoon, but most of it from the snowmelt. But in the non-Himalayas, they are not snow-fed, and their main source is the monsoon rainfall. So, in India, there are many non-Himalayan rivers which are flowing all across the central and the southern India, and you can see their names given here. So, we have seen the stages of stream or river development, that upper reaches, their steep slope, the sediment size, also dependent on the steep slope, the velocities, and the pattern. So when it comes to the middle part, you see there are moderate slopes and the different types of patterns like meandering or grading. It is exhibited. And lastly, the area or the last stage of the river when it is being disposed of into another water body like ocean or sea. There it has got gentle slope. It forms delta. All sediments deposited, and it flows around that deposited sediments split up into multiple channels. So in the upper part, it is a young stream. In the middle part, it is the mature stream, and in the end, last part or last stage is the old stream. So young streams, they are very active. They flow very fast through steep valleys, and they are they originate in the mountainous or hilly regions, and they may have water rapids and waterfalls. So you might have seen waterfalls in the northern areas. So those are actually the young streams. So they will be eroding the material on which they are flowing with the passage of time, as they have got very high level of energy, and they constantly keep on eroding its banks and the bed and carve its own width. So initially, you will see that the waterfall is actually eroding all the base and the banks, and then it will form a V-shaped type of valley. And as it has got a lot of energy, so its erosive power is also very high. So it forms waterfalls and rapids, and it erodes downwards, forming very deep, you can say it, technically we can call them as deep gullies. So in the youthful stage, being very uh, energetic and having lot of erosive powers, it has got the power to form deep gullies. So mature rivers, when the river flows down a more gradual slope with curves, they are called meanders. So meanders or the zigzag path that is exhibited by the mature rivers, and old rivers, that is the stage of the river when it flows very slowly through a very broad flat floodplain that it has carved. So a river in this stage mostly erodes its sides, causing change in its meanders, like the Mississippi River in USA. And these meanders, as we have seen, that they can eventually be cut off, and the oxbow lakes they are formed. So oxbow lakes, they are the cut off portion of the meanders. So meanders, they are classified as per their characteristics. So we won't go into this complex system, but the stream types can also be classified based on the meandering pattern. So you see the different meandering pattern and the classification as AA plus and up to the G part. So uh, another complex classification can be based on the meanders itself, that what type of meanders are being formed. So just for your information, that the river engineers also classify the stream types based on the meanders patterns, and in that reach, the stream can be then classified. So features of a floodplain, you will see they will be consisting of wide valleys, which will include the floodplains. The floodplains have the original floodplains and the depositional floodplains, where erosion or the deposition take place. And in the valleys, also there is formation of meanders, the cut banks and the point bars, that is the outer and the inner portion of the meander, and the cutoffs and the formation of the oxbow lakes. So in the floodplain, you will see a lot of features: meanders, oxbow lakes, stream terraces, graded streams, levees, back swamps, and Yazoo tributary. So I will show you or illustrate these. So floodplains. So you see in the floodplains, erosion is taking place on one side and deposition on the other side. So this is the path when the discharge is more than the capacity of this channel, it spills in this area and it inundates on the left and the right banks. These are the known as the floodplains. So this is the uh, area in which the inundation will take place in case of a flood. So mostly encroachment is carried out in these floodplains. Uh, you can say due to human intervention, the crops they are cultivated there. People start living in those areas, and during a flood, a lot of damages are being experienced due to the human intervention in the floodplains. But these are the natural paths of the rivers, and when it inundates, the discharge being more than the capacity of the channel, it will flow in this area. And in some part it will erode, and in some part it will deposit the sediment. So floodplain is actually a broad strip of land which is built up by sedimentation on either side of a stream channel. So during floods, this will be covered with water carrying suspended silt and clay. And when the flood recedes, what will happen? The water will come back to the river channel itself, but the sediment they will be left behind and they will be deposited on either the right or the left banks. So as the velocity decreases, so that means the sediments they will be depositing there, and a series of floods they will be building up a natural levees. So layers of sediment start depositing, and levees or embankments that are forming in the floodplains. So here you can see the formation of a natural levee by flooding, as water, river water is spread in the floodplains during a flood, but when the flood recedes, water enters back into the channel, but the sediments remain settled or deposited in the floodplains, forming natural levees. And uh, these natural levees are formed due to the sedimentation, which forms due to the decrease in velocity. So year by year, layers will be deposited, and small embankments or levees they will be formed. So these are natural levees. So there are also artificial levees, which are constructed by man itself to protect the surrounding areas. So we are not talking about the artificial levees. These are the natural levees which are built across the river in the floodplains. So this is the erosion and deposition along the meandering stream. So at the outer portion, which is known as the cut bank, there will be erosion, and the inner point bar there will be deposition of sediments due to the low velocity, and sediment will get deposited in the inner part and the outer part will be eroded. So here you see formation of Oxbow Lake, which was previously part of the Mender, now cut off as the two necks of the outer parts meets, and uh, uh, Oxbow Lake is formed, which remains for some time. When water dries off or it is infiltrated into the ground, and the remains of the old meanders, it remains there. So here you see evolution of a meander to Oxbow Lake. So you see how the two necks are formed, and it is cut off, and Oxbow Lake is formed. Here you can see the river meandering and formation is likely to occur for the Oxbow Lake. जहाँ जहाँ आपको next नजर आ रही है where they are meeting. Soon they will meet here also. So Oxbow lakes will be formed. एक यहाँ पर तकरीबन बनने वाली है. So in the near future, many Oxbow lakes will be formed. Here you see the Oxbow lake of the actual Oxbow lake. So this was the river, and you see the Oxbow lake, the cutoff, and water still standing as it is a freshly formed Oxbow lake. And another you can see here. So after some time, water will get evaporated as it has been cut off from the main source, and part of it will be infiltrated. Then stream terraces, which are formed in the floodplains. So they are the remnants of former floodplains. So as the river changes or shifts its course, so you see the terraces being formed. So here I will show you here. So this is the floodplain. So base level drops or the region uplifts and terraces are formed in floodplains. So here you see these are the terraces as the river keeps on shifting. So these are the old floodplains and terraces are formed in this way. So here an actual picture of river terraces. So it has dropped its base. So first it was flowing here, then it dropped to here and then to here, and now you see the present state. So these are the former floodplains and it has formed the terraces, the natural terraces one way. So actually it has eroded and shifted and और आप देखें कहाँ से कहाँ तक ये नीचे और steps. So these are the remnants of the old floodplains. So braided streams we have already discussed. So when the bed load is higher, then the braiding occurs and the channels they split up and they flow around the bars and then they reunite. So this you see a braided river in Alaska, in USA. So you see the river splitting up and flowing around the bars and then reuniting. तो ये आपको ब्रेडिंग पैटर्न बड़ा क्लियर नजर आ रहा होगा. So here again another braiding river split और फिर जो बार के along दोनों तरफ split हो गया और फिर reunite. Here another clear picture of a braiding formation. So bars flowing around the bars and then reuniting. So this was the end of lecture 4 and river mechanics. This topic will continue. This is a long topic or lengthy topic, so we will take up the remaining next time. So anything not clear up to now, river mechanics का जो पहला part है